Yes, we're live.
Yep, just checking the live stream. Live stream looks good. Sergeants, if you can start your recordings.
Cloud has started.
Okay.
The backup recording
Yep,
is
just
running.
checking the live stream. Live stream looks good. Sergeants, if you can start your record. Pardon me with that. Okay. Good morning. Or rather, good afternoon, and welcome to today's remote New York City Council joint hearing of the committees on veterans and the Committee on Small Business. At this time, would all panelists please turn on your video? To minimize disruption, please silence your electronic devices. And if you wish to submit testimony, you may do so via email at the following address: testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you very much for your cooperation. We are ready to begin.
Good morning. I'm Council Member Eric Dinowitz, Chair of New York City Council's Committee on Veterans. We're joined today by the Committee on Small Business, chaired by my colleague, Council Member Mark Gjonaj. I'd like to first acknowledge we've been joined by Council Member Brooks Powers. I don't see any other council members yet. So I want to thank you all for attending today's joint hearing with the Committee on Small Business to discuss city services to support veteran entrepreneurs. I also want to give a warm welcome to our service members, veterans, and military families who have joined us today. Veterans have a long history of returning home from their service and starting their own business. Since post-World War II, veterans have engaged in entrepreneurial activity at higher rates than civilians. However, rates of veteran entrepreneurship have been declining. In 2018, 11% of veterans were entrepreneurs, down from 15% in 2005. Recent research by Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families suggests some barriers may be more acute or more difficult to overcome for veterans. Some challenges faced by prospective veteran business owners include difficulty accessing capital, struggling to navigate resources, and a lack of assistance from medical and disability service providers. There is a clear need to ensure veteran entrepreneurs have access to training, mentors, and financial education. In 2015, the administration issued a report entitled "A Roadmap for Supporting Veteran-Owned Businesses." The report underscored the need to identify, track, and improve outreach to increase participation of veteran-owned businesses in city procurement. The city should act as a centralized point of contact to connect veterans with the resources necessary to ensure that their businesses succeed. However, city services can only be utilized if DVS and SBS collaborate to market their services to the veteran community. The 2015 report issued 7 recommendations to help veterans grow their business and compete for city contracts. One of our goals today is to evaluate the progress the administration has made on implementing these concrete recommendations. The city must work with stakeholders to give veteran business owners every opportunity to thrive. Our hope is that this hearing will help enhance public understanding of available programs and break down the barriers to veteran entrepreneurship. And I want to thank the Veterans Committee staff for their help in putting this hearing together. Committee Counsel Bianca Vitale, Policy Analyst Elizabeth Arts, Senior Finance Analyst Sebastian Bacci, as well as my staff, my Chief of Staff Jenna Klaus, Legislative Director Mike Corbett, and my scheduler Sabrina Campbell. Now turn it over to Chair Gjonaj.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz. Good afternoon. I am Councilmember Mark Gjonaj, Chair of the Committee on Small Business, and I'd like to welcome you to our joint oversight hearing with the Committee on Veterans, chaired by my dear friend, Councilmember Dinowitz, my second favorite Dinowitz in the world. Our goal today is to conduct oversight on the administration's effort to boost veteran entrepreneurship, to understand the success and challenges of these efforts, and to hear from stakeholders about the steps the next administration can take to better serve our veteran-owned businesses. After returning from service, veterans can deal with a number of challenges, from difficulties finding employment and reintegrating into civilian culture, to dealing with service-related disabilities or disorders, such as chronic pain or PTSD. Veteran entrepreneurs can also face unique barriers to starting a business. Prospective veteran business owners may struggle to access capital and navigate available resources. A 2020 study conducted by the Syracuse University Institute for Veteran Military Families concerning veteran entrepreneurship found that 33% of the respondents could not afford the long-term capital to start a business. I fear that the financial devastation caused by the pandemic on small businesses has further exacerbated these barriers that veteran entrepreneurs can face. If veteran-owned businesses have difficulty in normal times navigating available resources and accessing capital, it may have been extremely challenging for veteran businesses to access the various city, state, and federal financial relief programs during the pandemic. I am confident DVS and SBS were aware that the unique challenges veteran entrepreneurs face become more acute during the pandemic, and I look forward to hearing from the administration on the steps it took to support these patriotic Americans. SBS and DVS do have a number of programs that assist veteran entrepreneurs. SBS offers a boot camp for veterans that help veterans apply skills they developed in the military to growing a successful and profitable business. DVS and SBS encourage applicable veteran business owners to certify their businesses by applying to the Emerging Business Enterprise, or EBE program, or the Minority Women-Owned Business Enterprise, MWBE program. As certified businesses have greater access to contracting opportunities with city agencies. Entrepreneurial veterans that use DVS Vets Connect NYC can also be connected to a DVS care coordinator that can help veteran New Yorkers apply to finding opportunities, funding opportunities, and training programs at the state and federal level. While I appreciate the administration is addressing the unique concerns veteran New Yorkers face in owning and operating a small business, the purpose of our oversight hearing today is to understand how productive these programs are in addressing veteran concerns and whether they are sufficient. How many veterans participate in the SBS Veteran-Focused Business Bootcamp? How many veterans does SBS administer annually? How many boot camp programs? Do SBS and DVS help businesses register as EBE or WMBE? How many veterans are calling Vet Connect NYC for help with finding opportunities? If we're aware that navigating available resources can be challenging for veteran New Yorkers, I want to ensure that the veterans are aware and using these resources that the administration provides. We will hear this afternoon from stakeholders about their perspective on the administration's effort to boost veteran entrepreneurship. As this legislative session will be ending soon, I look forward to engaging with advocates on what programs the next administration should continue and areas of improvement that will be implemented to better serve our veteran entrepreneurs. While we can never truly thank our veterans for risking their lives to serve our country, it is the government's duty to ensure veterans are able to readjust to civilian life and contribute to society. I further add, a country should be judged. In this case, New York City should be judged on how it treats and the support that it offers its veterans. With that being said, I'd like to thank my legislative director, Austin Sackler, our legislative counsel, Stephanie Jones, and policy analyst, Noah Meixler, and financial analyst, Aliyah Ali, for their hard work in preparing for this hearing. I turn it back to the council.
Thank you, Chair Jonai. We're going to turn it over to Committee Counsel Bianca Vitale to go over some procedural items.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Bianca Vitale, and I'm Committee Counsel to the Committee on Veterans for the New York City Council. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, when you will be unmuted by the host. I will be calling on panelists to testify. Please listen for your name to be called. I will be periodically announcing who the next panelist will be. For everyone testifying today, please note that there may be a few seconds of delay before you are unmuted, and we thank you in advance for your patience. All hearing participants should submit written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. At today's hearing, the first panelist to give testimony will be representatives from the administration, followed by council member questions, and then members of the public will have an opportunity to testify. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the raise hand function in Zoom, and I will call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. I will now call on members of the administration to testify. Testimony will be provided by James Hendon, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Veterans Services. In addition, the following members of the administration will be available for questioning for committee questions. Denishel Gross, Deputy Commissioner, Division of Economic and Financial Opportunity at the New York City Department of Small Business Services. In addition to Kwame Francis, Deputy Commissioner and Chief of Staff at the New York City Department of Veterans Services. Before we begin, I will administer the oath. I will call on each of you individually for a response. Please raise your right hand. Okay, and just the administration raised their right hand. Sorry. Commissioner Hendon, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Deputy Commissioner Francis? Hold on one second, you're on mute. Can you say that again for the record?
I do.
Thank you. Also, Deputy Commissioner Gross?
I do.
Awesome, thank you so much. Commissioner Hendon, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you so much. First off, good afternoon, Chair Dinowitz, Chair Jonah, committee members, also Councilmember Powers, and advocates. My name is James Hendon. I'm proud to serve as the Commissioner for the New York City Department of Veterans Services, or DVS, joined by DVS Deputy Commissioner Kwame Francis, who oversees agency-wide operations and programs, and New York City Small Business Services Deputy Commissioner Denishel Gross, who oversees the Division of Economic and Financial Opportunity at SBS. I welcome this opportunity to testify about entrepreneurship resources and services for veteran small business owners. According to the University of Syracuse and JP Morgan report titled The State of Veteran Entrepreneurship, What We Know and Next Steps, veteran entrepreneurship dropped by 33% over the last 20 years. There's strong reason to believe this drastic decline was caused by many variables. However, DVS believes the major causes for this decrease were a result of three key factors. First, being our New York City employers and major corporate initiatives around the nation targeting improvements to the unemployment rate for young veterans over the last decade led to an incredible amount of employment opportunities in the private sector for transitioning service members. Secondly, our partners at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families shared that 75% of veteran entrepreneurs reported encountering challenges with starting and growing their business, with the most common challenge being social capital in the form of networks and mentorships. Lastly, veterans face greater difficulty accessing capital relative to non-veterans, according to the Federal Reserve Bank's Small Business Credit Survey. Veteran-owned businesses were less likely to be deemed low credit risks and more likely to be deemed medium credit risks. This can be due to frequent moves and overseas travel associated with military life, Veterans may have a harder time building a credit score and history relative to non-veterans. According to the Small Business Credit Survey, a greater share of veteran-owned businesses sought loans of $100,000 or less. One explanation for lower approval rates among veterans could be a mismatch in the lender from which the financing was sought. To address the needs outlined in the report referenced above and the report completed by our partners at the New York City Department of Small Business Services, titled A Roadmap for Supporting Veteran-Owned Businesses, DVS partnered with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, Coalition for Veteran-Owned Businesses, and First Data's Center of Excellence for Veteran Entrepreneurship to host the DVS VetSource event at Google's Grow with Google Learning Center in October of 2019. VetSource brought veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs together with procurement executives from some of the largest companies around the country for a day of procurement-focused panel discussions, networking, resource connections, and breakout sessions. This event helped veteran and military spouse-owned businesses gain valuable resources, information, and best practices around corporate supplier diversity and both private and public procurement readiness to help them grow their companies and find supplier opportunities. Panel participants and guests and speakers for the procurement in the public and private sectors discussion included the global head of supplier diversity and inclusion from Google, the City University of New York's director of supplier diversity, AT&T's supplier diversity manager, Johnson & Johnson's senior manager of acquisitions and divestitures, Turner Construction's procurement manager, and speakers from the Mayor's Office of Contract Services and the Mayor's Office of MWBE. In addition to the panelists, VetSource organized breakout sessions for veteran business owners to engage directly with public and private sector representatives from New York State Office of General Services, the New York City Small Business Solution Centers, Walmart, Pfizer, Salesforce, Signature Bank, Greenway USA, and the Excelsior Growth Fund, a local community development financial institution. In addition to VetSource, DVS connects veteran business owners with a variety of needs through our robust Vet Connect network, our VetBiz NYC map, and our DVS website. The DVS website provides information on over 40 different programs and resources ranging from starting a small business, training programs, business mentorship and networking, certifications, business reopening, grants and loans, legal services, federal relief, COVID-19 relief, and more. DVS's interactive online map, known as VetBiz NYC, allows veteran entrepreneurs to promote their businesses and encourage the public to shop local and support our veteran-owned businesses. Our map is currently home to 300 veteran-owned businesses from 29 different categories throughout the 5 boroughs. Lastly, our core team of care coordinators utilized Vet Connect NYC to connect veteran entrepreneurship to over 15 organizations that provide 20 unique programs that offer a range of resources, including access to capital, marketing development, business planning, and more. In conclusion, we thank you for the opportunity to testify on this matter and look forward to any questions you or the committee members may have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hendon. I will now turn it over to questions from Chair Dinowitz, followed by questions from Chair Jonah. Panelists, please stay unmuted if possible during this question and answer period. Thank you. Chair Dinowitz, please begin.
Thank you. And before I begin, I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Vallone has joined us at the hearing. Commissioner, you just mentioned the number of businesses that appear on the map, but how many, does that include every veteran-owned business in New York City? And if not, how many veteran-owned businesses are there in New York City?
We've got an estimate of the veteran-owned businesses in New York City. The estimated count is 953 in New York City. So 5 boroughs, estimate is 953. That number comes from looking at the state's directory of service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. When we look at the state's directory and we say, let's look at all it turns out there are, as of an hour ago, there are 152 certified state, 142 service-disabled veteran-owned businesses in the 5 boroughs. There are 142. The disability rate for our veterans in this city is 14.9%. So doing that math, if you take the 142 and divide by 14.9%, you get 953. So our estimate as far as how many VOBs are in the 5 boroughs is 953. We have 300 listed on the map, Chair.
Okay, and the solid data you have is the 142 from the.
It's the 300. The solid is the 300. It's a 300 is a solid data. The estimate
that's on the map.
The estimate is 953 total citywide, but right now it's 300 that are on the map, which is nyc.gov/vetbiznyc.
And what are the principal industries of New York City's veteran-owned businesses?
Right now, the best answer I can give is by looking at the SDVOB directory. The 142 is the best one we can use to intuit it, because we have businesses that are still updating their information that were not SDVOBs that are on that map. And so when we look at it, the top ticket for us has been consulting and other services. As far as of those SDVOBs, 74 out of the 142 are in the field of consulting and other services. And then after that, we get into the space of construction, which accounts for, 22 of the business are in the construction space. We've got to get back to you with the other numbers, Mr. Chair, but to be clear, the best proxy for us is looking at the 142 SDVOBs, because we have all the information. We're still getting more information. It's updated in real time by all of our businesses that are using the map that are not SDVOBs.
Right. So if a business reaches out, let's say to SBS for support, does SBS, are they asking the agency, or sorry, does the agency ask if the business is veteran owned to better identify those supports and get a better sense of the data, right? So we're not so much estimating how many businesses, but we would have a solid data on that.
I'm gonna defer to my colleagues as far as Deputy Commissioner Gross from SBS and to Deputy Commissioner Francis from DVS about it. I'll start by saying this is currently within Passport. Any business owner who's vending with the city has a place where they can self-identify as a veteran when they're signing up within Passport, which is how vending and how monetary exchanges occur between the government and businesses. So when we look at Passport, the most recent count we have, as far as from our friends at the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, at 375 businesses have identified at some point in Passport as being veteran owned.
Now, just because this was the, I think a hearing a few months ago, when we say veteran, is it clear that it's veteran or current service member? Because I'm looking at the Workforce One, part of the Workforce One website. And I just want to see if I can find the language properly. But it says served. It asks if any of these apply to you. It says served in the U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, or reserved. And one of the things you testified on a few months ago is that in New York City, one of the great things about New York City is it doesn't matter whether you serve or have served in the armed forces. You are treated with the same dignity, respect, and city services. So in doing that work, is that part of Passport to ensure that a veteran, whether they're currently serving in the reserves or they have served in the reserves, are identifying that or have the ability to identify that way?
I'm going to defer to Deputy Commissioner Gross on this one.
So in terms of the information we collect on service, it is not restricted to veterans that have concluded their service. We're asking in our universal business profile to sign up for any SBS programs, and in our workforce intake programs, and in our intake programs for in our intake forms for our procurement technical assistance center, them to self-identify as having had a history of service, whether that is ongoing or has concluded.
Okay, I haven't seen the Passport form, so I guess so that's good if it is clear and explicit that to veterans and current service members that identity is for anyone currently serving or who has served. Because again, on this access on nyc.gov/eligibility for the Workforce One program, I guess, or access, which would take you to Workforce One, it uses served in the past tense. And Commissioner, I know that that's a issue you and I have been trying to talk about and address, that it's not only past service members, it's current service members. That's what our city provides, right? So veterans, face unique barriers to owning and operating business. So can you describe in more detail the programs the administration has implemented to actually address the challenges? So it sounds like you're starting to collect some information. What are the programs that the administration has implemented to help our veterans and service members?
I think for us, a lot of it, and I'll begin this, and I'll defer also to Deputy Commissioner Gross, Deputy Commissioner Francis to add on. A lot of it has been getting the word out to veterans about being certified with the city. So if we look at an audience where we have only about 953, we're trying to identify as many of them as possible. We know 300 of them. A lot of it is making sure that those 300 plus, really as many of them as possible, know here's what's out there to you as far as dealing with what the city's offerings are, be it dealing with the city's procurement technical assistance centers, be it dealing with the city's small business solution centers, be it, how do I sign up if I want to become certified as an MWBE or as an emerging business enterprise or an LBE. And so a lot of it has been, we've held various webinar trainings in parallel with our friends at SBS to get the word out to our veterans on what's out there, to try to bring them into what currently exists as far as services. And I just want to add that there's so much in this. I want to make sure I'm not missing things. I want to make sure that Deputy Commissioner Francis and Gross can chime in as well.
Yeah, I'll just sort of add to what you said, Commissioner. So yeah, we've definitely been working with certainly Deputy Commissioner Gross here over these past 18 months during a pandemic very closely. But what we've been trying to focus on, while balancing the different hierarchy of needs that the arrest and effects of the pandemic presented, whether that's food insecurity and health and mental health in the veteran community, we wanted to focus on really try to better understand the veteran-owned business and veteran entrepreneurial landscape in the city. And so as the commissioner kind of mentioned or alluded to, some of the collaborative efforts that we've achieved with SBS is that veteran-owned business map, which is a huge deal for us, because that gives us an opportunity to begin to assess the data of the different types of industries and the different types of services a lot of those veteran-owned businesses and entrepreneurs require. And so we are hoping that, in a short amount of time that we're able to produce, and onboard those 300 different businesses onto our map, that we can begin to develop better relationships with them, and hopefully in the future begin to convene them to really sort of tease out a lot of the different points of friction to help, better connect them to those resources. The commissioner alluded to earlier, as well as in his testimony, that we created the alias nyc.gov/vetbusiness as a way to sort of create a centralized location where veteran-owned businesses and entrepreneurs can access those resources. I think one of the things that we all can agree on is that there are a myriad of different resources that are available to all New Yorkers alike, but a lot of the issue tends to be take up. And so by us creating that alias and centralizing those resources for those veteran-owned businesses, it allows them to go to one location to be able to access those resources. And some of the other things that we're looking at doing, hopefully in the future, as I said, is convening all those different veteran businesses, utilizing the data that we capture from veterans able to be to self-identify in the passport program to access city contracts, and to be able to utilize all that data, amalgamate it, and really begin to better understand the landscape. So that's the work that we're continuing to do in collaboration with SBS, certainly with Deputy Commissioner Gross. And so I'll hand it over to you, Deputy Commissioner, if you wanted to add anything on that. But we've done a lot of meaningful work, and I think that the collaboration has been very strong, especially within these past 2 years.
Yeah, no argument there. DVS is a critical partner for SBS. We've worked very closely together during the pandemic. No end in sight for that. We have, of course, promoted our certification programs and our procurement technical assistance programs generally and specifically to the veteran community. We've worked hard to cross-certify veteran-owned businesses that have been certified by the state as service-disabled veterans to bring them into our city certification programs, work to ensure that all of those businesses are aware of city contracting opportunities, state registrations, federal registrations that can help their businesses grow and survive the pandemic through government contracting. In addition, veterans are very much part of our business education programming, our technical assistance programming, and our financing assistance programs. So we have done our best to make all of those services available to veterans, to increase awareness of those services through partnership with DVS and the community-based organizations that are focused on this veterans community.
Before I get to my next question, I just want to acknowledge, hold on, I just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Ampry Samuel. All right, Commissioner Hendon, please continue.
I got to start just by also acknowledging Councilmember Vallone and Councilmember Ampry Samuel, who are here, just to recognize them too. Now, just back to this question, back to the questioning. We held bi-weekly check-ins between Deputy Commissioner Gross's staff and our staff for the better part of more than a year, really from last summer up through just this past fall. And so there's so many things to say here. Beyond what we've been doing within the administration, we've also tried to make 1 + 1 = 3 as far as really enacting and trying to, I don't want to say to leverage our partners in this space throughout the region. Just to name a few, you've got the Bunker Labs Network, you've got the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum, the National Security Innovation Network, the New York State Veterans Chamber of Commerce, New York Veteran-Owned Business Association, NYU Veterans Future Lab, the Small Business Administration, the SBDC, or Small Business Development Corporation, Veteran Business Outreach Centers, and then as far as other adjacent partners between us, SBS, and the New York State's Office of General Services, their SDVOB division, and then a separate PTAC as far as the LaGuardia Community Colleges PTAC, along with the SBS PTACs, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. We got to a place where we were sending information out to what came to 15 different network partners who are aggregators of veteran entrepreneurs every few weeks to keep pushing things out to people to make sure they knew what we've got going on as far as beyond administration things, what we've done to try to leverage our friends. And then I want to go back to another question, the count as far as what industries are our veterans going into. Just based on looking at the SDVOB data, we know the highest number is 74 out of those 142 service-disabled veteran-owned businesses are in consulting. We know that it's 25 are in the commodity space. So really 25 things like food and beverage, printing, logistics, that like, and then another 22 are in construction. So those top 3 fields, consulting, commodities, and then construction. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I have two more main points. One is you've been speaking a lot about outreach, reaching out to our vets. How would you gauge the success of your outreach efforts, and what barriers exist right now to reaching out to vets and making sure that they know certain programs exist?
If we set the table by saying we've estimated 953 veteran-owned businesses in the 5 boroughs, so 953 in the 5 boroughs, and we know 300 of them. Mm-hmm. I would argue that some of the barriers are to engage those veterans in that group of the 653 to go find them, and they may oftentimes not interact in veteran circles. We encounter the same thing on other issues in the veteran space, where to get that new veteran in the mix under the umbrella, it may require us to go into an area that we're not going into normally. It's not that that person is going to the typical American Legion or Veterans of Foreign Wars meeting or to whatever network of veterans. They may be tied to another group. So for us, it's breaking through to really non-veteran entities to be able to identify our people. I'd argue that that's one piece of it for us as far as expanding whom we're doing outreach to. Another barrier which kind of transcends us, we have to speak to it. We still have many veterans who do not self-identify. And so we're talking about this in the business context, but we can speak to this in other contexts also, Mr. Chair, in that I don't want anything special. I don't want any special treatment, any additional attention. I don't want to, I don't want anybody looking at me any different, from the other person. So you've got to deal with that also. So I fear that we may never get a handle on all 953. I'd argue another piece of this too on the outreach side, and I'm going to defer to Deputy Commissioner Francis, Deputy Commissioner Rose to add to this, is to do it in the smartest way possible in this era of COVID, where you have people who have changed how they've operated and how they have worked in general. And this crosses verticals for us on the veteran side, as far as how do we conduct outreach in a new normal where you may have a business who says, look, I'm going to try to set something up where it's very much completely virtual. So I may not be the person you'll see at an in-person gathering, or someone who is approaching it from a perspective of, I'm left my W-2 job. I want to start my own thing and I don't know where to begin. And we need to find that person as well, because that person has made an entire life shift. And how do we identify them in this new landscape? And so there's a lot more to add to this as far as barriers to outreach. That's just a few, but I'm happy to just defer to Deputy Commissioner Francis and DC Gross. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add to what you've said, Commissioner, is I'll talk about quickly about the proactive work that we're doing with respect to outreach. So a huge issue that we all understand very critically is the issue of bridging that return from active service into the civilian sector, right? And so we're partnering and we're working closely with the DoD, the VA, in addition to the National Association for State Association for Veteran Affairs, and New York State Division of Veteran Services to get a better handle on who are those transitioning veterans, active duty service members, who they are, and where they're coming to our city across the 5 boroughs. So we're very close and made huge inroads and be able to access that data so that before they even get to New York, we can be able to do outreach to them, targeted outreach to them, wherever they are at the military bases, to be able to give them the resources to ensure that they know what they are, they know who we are as an agency, and the myriad of different resources that are available to them. So that's some of the proactive work that we're doing. And I think that'll help with ensuring that they know all the universe of resources that are available to them. So just wanted to talk about that proactive work, which is huge for us to be able to access the DD-214s and which is the military record of service of those transitioning members before they even get to New York is really critical for us to help us to do the essential outreach that is needed and connection to services.
And I don't know if DC Gross wanted to add anything to that.
I would just add perhaps that, we've tried to make smart marketing investments that are responsive to the moment that we're in. And one of the most effective has been investing in Google search advertising, so that when someone puts a search term into a web engine, they're seeking a certain set of information. The free resources provided by the city are some of the first hits they receive. So meeting that moment of need and inquiry with an on-point resource that's provided by their tax dollars is a great way of spreading the word about our programs, because it's impossible, to create as broad a knowing as we want at every moment. And so investing in advertising through technology that can meet folks at that moment of need has been very important for us, in addition to of course, all of the work with partners that Commissioner Hendon described.
So, and this will be my last question before I turn it over to Chair Jonai. But when you spoke before, DC Gross, about bringing veterans into existing programs, Chair Jonai and I both in our opening statements, and of course we all recognize that veterans face, other significant challenges. So can you talk a little more about what it's like bringing the veterans into existing programs, and if those existing programs actually address the needs that we're talking about, because those needs seem to still exist even with all the programs that the city is providing.
So certainly in our certification programs, we recognize that any firm coming into our certification programs, that those programs exist because those firms have been historically excluded from procurement opportunities, and capacity building, one-on-one technical assistance, intensive technical assistance are part of the design of those programs. We're not expecting that business owners are going to, jump into, procurement with, a city as large and complex as New York City without those supports. And so,
let me pause for a second. I don't mean to be rude. I just want to get clarity on this. So,
sure.
For example, if I have a veteran-owned business, and then they self-identify on Passport as a veteran-owned or service member-owned business, do they get some sort of priority? Do they jump to the top of the list? Do they get a phone call from DVS? Are they prioritized in any way, knowing that there's a specific need with our veteran community?
I'll leave it to Commissioner Hendon to speak about how DVS may reach out to the veterans on that Passport list. For our part, we are reaching out to those self-identified veterans to invite them to apply for our certification programs if they're eligible, or to participate in our Procurement Technical Assistance Center services if they're not eligible or ready for certification. So we're explaining to them all of those services and inviting them to partake.
But Commissioner Hendon, before you go, I guess part of my question is that outreach for these programs any different than what you would otherwise do for really any business or any business on Passport? Is there anything different or unique that veterans receive?
So we reach out to the self-identified categories in Passport, which are not all businesses registering in Passport. We have self-identified veterans, self-identified worker co-op owned businesses, LGBTQ owned businesses, and self-identified MWBEs. And so we're reaching out to the registrants and passports in those categories with messaging and description of services that relates to our understanding of needs that are common to those groups. However, also recognizing that every business is different and we're learning from them what their needs are.
Okay, I don't know if Commissioner Hendon or if you wanted to add anything.
So for us with the 375 who identified as veterans who are in Passport, we do perform outreach to those veteran-owned businesses as far as making sure they're aware of the different city certifications and to take advantage of all that's around them as far as the resources we provide and that we connect folks to. And we also tell them to tie in with nyc.gov/vetbusiness, which, having looked at every single state's Department of Veteran Services webpage, I can tell you we have more on nyc.gov/vetbusiness for veteran entrepreneurs than any state. And so we make sure to reach out to those veterans as far as that form of outreach.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to Chair Jonai for his questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz, and thank you for those great questions. And I want to thank the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner for answering them. Commissioner Hendon, do we know the number of veterans that call New York City home? What is the accepted number?
Accepted number, Mr. Chair, is 210-808.
210-808.
808.
So 210,808.
That's correct. And that number includes those who are still serving and those who have, I still serve, for instance, I'm in that number, and those who no longer serve.
So then I'm a numbers person, and I'm just looking at, and I believe SBS will correct me if I'm wrong here, but the accepted number of small businesses that call New York City home or are based in New York City is roughly 240,000. Is that correct, Deputy Commissioner?
Yes.
Based on the numbers that you had just given us, Commissioner Hendon, using 953 veteran-owned businesses, of which only 300 participate in your map, that puts it roughly at 0.15% of veteran businesses compared to all small businesses in New York City. Now, these veterans, and I say this because I have the pleasure of probably having more posts and American Legions than anyone else in the city of New York in their council district. I believe I have 7, and I'm sure someone will correct me if that number is higher. That represent, it's higher. Peter's saying much higher. So I'll wait for Peter's expertise. That call the 13th council district home, representing thousands of veterans. And Commissioner, I believe you had the privilege and joy of participating at our Veterans Parade recently, and you saw the number of veterans and the support that we had in Throgs Neck for that celebration, which was incredible. I'm looking at the numbers, and to me, it's always about the numbers. And you clearly identified the issues: social, capital, and entrepreneurship as being the issues. And then Deputy Commissioner highlighted that your resources are focused on outreach using advertising in Google. Well, then my question is, how much money is actually allocated in the SBS budget toward marketing to veteran business entrepreneurs? Do we have a dollar amount?
I don't have a dollar amount for you today, Chairman Jonai. I'm happy to look at that. I think it would be, we can look at the spend over the past fiscal years and share that as an update with the committee.
That would be significant, because that would also determine the number of resources that we're allocating to this. And that would probably underscore why there's a 33% decrease over the last 20 years in business entrepreneurs by our veterans, according to Commissioner Hendricks. Is that correct? 33%.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in when you get a chance, Chair
Yeah,
Jordan. When you're ready, I'd
absolutely.
love to jump in this if it's okay, because I like numbers too, but yeah.
You jump in whenever you feel necessary. Go ahead. It's all
All right,
yours.
well, population New York City 2020 is 8.8 million. And, we just talked about 240,000 businesses. We just agreed that 240,000 businesses per SPS, divide that by 8,804,190, and I get 0.027. And so now I just want to point out that our numbers are still lower when you put it the way you put it, but it's still, it's not too far away. It's far, but it's not as far away as it's made to seem from our non-veteran friends with this, as far as if we look at it based on population versus businesses. I get 0.027, and if we do the same math, I just wanted to mention that. And then the other one, I'm sorry, yeah.
The only factor that you're not considering in that is those that are under the age of 18 that will not have the opportunity to have a business. So when you look at those numbers of 8.6, that's inclusive of all New Yorkers that reside in New York City. And that's a number of people that are below age that wouldn't generally qualify to open a small business or qualify to be employed.
I respect that. And since you brought age up, and since you mentioned that piece of it, we have to call out the changing demographic of the veteran community. If you look at it, ever since the draft ended July 1st, 1973, we no longer had a draft. Our population has declined since then because you have, an all volunteer force deploying over and over. You've got technology used a lot where service members were used, and you have contractors doing a lot of work as well. And so when we look at the demographic shifts in our population, one of these other reports we refer to is World War II generation had 49.7% of World War II veterans were self-employed at some point. Korea War, 40% self-employed. When we look at the 9/11 generation, it is 4.5%. And so when we look at how there's been this shift between who's going to go into self-employment versus into W-2. That's also a structural change. And these are national numbers when you mention a 33% number. That's not a New York City piece. And so we just want to make sure we're calling out, I started the testimony by highlighting this hiring our heroes effort is a very real and beneficial thing. It's led to a situation where many of our veterans are getting approached and engaged well before they even leave service and convinced to go on to the W-2 side. And so it's so much deeper that I just want to make sure we're acknowledging the demographic shifts and the way the market on the employment side has shifted and how that impacts entrepreneurship as well. Even in the city, it's 71.2% of our veterans are 55 or older. And so that could be another piece of this, as far as speaking of age, people who are moving away from working in general and then transitioning to this younger generation for whom they may not have embraced self-employment in the same way as the people 20, 30, 40 years before them. But just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go back to the question about how much we allocate in our budget toward outreach and advocacy. Do we have a number of dedicated staff that focus solely on reaching out to veteran entrepreneurs? You even have a person, that could be SBS or you, Commissioner Hunden, in your agency. Do you have a specific person that does nothing more than reach out to veteran entrepreneurs, engaging and educating on the services and the supports that are afforded to them?
We have someone who has this role, but it's not the only thing that she does. So we do have someone whose main piece of this is to coordinate with folks who are running this veteran business map, who coordinate with other leaders in the veteran space, to constantly check in with those 15 veteran-owned business network leaders to make sure that our messages are getting filtered out through them. But this person, who's our director of programs, does have other roles, but we do have someone for whom this is a very large part of her portfolio, Mr. Chair.
And at SBS, we have external affairs teams in every division, and they are doing the work of outreaching to their target clients, but not specifically for veterans only. They're attempting to reach, all of businesses across the 5 boroughs, businesses with high need, businesses that conform to the requirements of our programming. So minority, women-owned, immigrant businesses, and businesses that require the support of the city to survive and grow, whether that's a physical emergency or the financial challenges of the pandemic. So the way it's staffed is each division has program staff and external affairs staff, and then we also have a marketing team that's focused on providing resources to our community-based partners, understanding that they're mission-driven, they're close to the individuals we're trying to serve, but they may be lesser resourced than the city. So we're providing information that they can share, so that by connecting their clients to those city resources, they're also achieving their missions. But there's not a veteran-specific outreach staff person at SBS.
Thank you, Deputy. So the reason why I asked that question is I compare it to my own council district. So roughly every council district is 170,000 plus or minus. And I can tell you, no matter what extent I go to, I could never reach out to every constituent, regardless of what I try. And I've got a large staff that focuses on outreach and newsletters, emails, text messages, flyers, attending all meetings within the community, whether they be community board or civic groups or other organizations, always promoting what the services that we offer. And we could never get the word out entirely. So here you have 210,000, which is significantly larger than a council district. And I just explained what efforts we go through that focus specifically on outreach. And we can never get into every household, every neighborhood, every street. I hope that we'll start looking at this in a different fashion. If the objective is to reach out to all of these veterans, you don't have a committed staff doing so, you'll never reach out to them. And we'll hear from some of the panelists, which I hope both the commissioners and deputies will stay on to hear from them. I'm sure they've never heard of these programs before. And these are actively engaged veterans that operate out of posts and American Legions. And Peter Del Devio has a citywide title, and I'm sure he'll share with you that if he hasn't heard about this or is aware of these programs, he can assure you that the veterans that he encounters day in and day out have not. You mentioned, Deputy Commissioner, that a certification program of eligible businesses. Can you further elaborate on that?
The city has 3 certification programs that are designed to support businesses and contracting with the City of New York and diversify the city's vendor pools. The largest program is our MWBE program. That program certifies businesses that are majority owned, operated, and controlled by individuals who are African American, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, or women of all races. And then we have an emerging business enterprise program. That program certifies businesses owned by majority owned, operated, and controlled by individuals who are from groups that have been socially disadvantaged historically in American society and also experienced economic disadvantages that relate to the social categories that they're part of, but it's race and gender neutral. And then we have an LBE program for smaller construction firms as well that operate in areas of the city that are economically disadvantaged or employ economically disadvantaged individuals. So those are the 3 certification programs, and veterans, depending on their ethnicity and their gender, and also their history in business, may qualify for any of those certification programs.
But I think those 3 apply to any New Yorker.
Yes.
It's not specifically, the word veteran is not used in any one of those programs?
No, those programs are based on the criteria that I outlined: ethnicity, gender, for LBE, the business type, and for EBE, the social disadvantages of the majority owners and their experiences in business, having encountered some economic disadvantage due to their social characteristics.
So if I was a veteran that did not fall under any of those categories, I'm not a woman, I'm not a minority, I am not economic, social, disadvantaged, I would never know that those programs, I could get certification, if you could even get certification as a veteran-owned business. Is that correct?
So the city does not have any certification program for veteran-owned businesses specifically. The state operates a SDVOB program through OGS. However, you don't need to be certified to do business with the city of New York. And the vast majority of firms that win contracts with the city are not certified. That's why the programs continue to be needed. So those firms need only register, get a vendor number with the city, create an account in Passport, and they can be solicited for contracts. We're trying to get up to the point where 30% of city contracts go to firms in our certification programs. We're not there yet. So as a non-certified firm, your chances of winning are certainly no lower than an MWBE. The MWBEs are working to gain market share in city procurement.
Right, but there is a benefit to being certified by one of these programs. Obviously, even if it's 30%, that means you're not hitting it because of various reasons. But there is an actual benefit to being certified.
Yes, we hope so. We want very much to support the firms in the program in achieving the goals of the program and serving the city through partnership and contracts and thus growing their firms.
So then the question is, why aren't we offering veterans a certification that could benefit them?
So the findings in the Veterans Business Report, and I think the reality on the ground is that our certification programs are broad enough to serve most veterans who present themselves as needing the support of city programs to enter procurement. And for those who do not qualify for our certification programs, we run a procurement technical assistance center that is open to all businesses, not just MWBEs, EBEs, or LBEs. Through that PTAC program, we help any business that wants to grow through government contracting. And so I don't know that there's any veteran that would, veteran business owner who's left out of those supportive services.
Thank you for that answer, Deputy. But these are big umbrellas. And I think in my opening statement, I'm not sure if you caught it, I referred to specifically that a nation, in this regard, New York City, should be judged on how it treats its veterans. Those that adhere to the call, those that we ask to enlist and serve and risk. Alongside of them, by the way, is their families and siblings and extended family that serve with our brave men and women in the military. Why aren't we giving them a program where they could receive certification that they could directly benefit from as a veteran, not as a veteran woman, not as a veteran minority, not as a veteran that is social, economic disadvantage, but under the title veteran, a proud title that they wear as a badge of honor that we don't do enough to recognize.
Yeah, I would say that the MWBE program and policy of the city is coming up on 30 years old. And we have equity goals in that program. As I said, it's a big tent program that we have not yet achieved. And I think the city is still working to innovate and in that program and advance the goals of the program to achieve the goals that we've set for MWBE procurement. And that focus is important because we haven't crossed the finish line yet. And more importantly, if we're able to serve veteran-owned businesses through the programming, we can adjust who we're working with, our marketing messages, to be sure that veterans are aware that they are welcome in these services and that they're eligible for them if their characteristics align. We looked at numbers for our PTAC services, and this year so far, we've served 41 veteran-owned businesses and 68 instances of technical assistance and capacity building within my division in SBS alone. Last year, we provided 140 technical assistance services to veteran-owned businesses in my division of SBS alone. And of course, SBS's majority investments in veterans are in our workforce programs, where we've served more than 24,000 veterans and their spouses since July 2012. So through work with DVS, other partner entities, and smart marketing investments, we are managing to reach these veterans and recruit them into the programs. We want to do more, and we're committed to doing more in partnership, but I don't think we're missing the mark altogether. Those numbers tell me a different story.
Deputy Commissioner Gross, thank you for that. I think the WMBE program is a great program, and I'm hopeful that we'll hit that 30% mark, but my question was specific. Why aren't we offering a similar certification specifically geared to with the title veteran? None of these programs have the word veteran in it.
Yeah, I think the only answer I can provide to that is that the city hasn't identified a need for that type of program. In fact, I think the opposite conclusion was reached. The conclusion in the report and the policy decision coming out of the report was to work to maximize veteran participation in the existing certification program. And that's exactly what we've done.
210,000 New Yorkers that are veterans that call New York City home, I think is a big marketplace. That's
Agreed.
A sizable pool. Veterans are unique individuals that may not want to be known by any other title. For many of them, serving this country has been their greatest honor, and they want to be known as veterans. They want to be accepted as a veteran, not as a minority, not as a woman, not as someone that is social or economically challenged. They want that title veteran. That's my interaction with them. So when I ask the question, why haven't we? And you say that if the intent is to pull veterans into the MWBE program to raise the number under MWBE,
no.
I say that's great. But my concern are veterans. Strictly. Why can't we offer similar programs of certification that give veterans an advantage?
So the one thing I'll note in addition to what I've shared previously is that we realize that identity is very, very personal, and that veteran identity is critical to individuals who have served. And that's why one of the recommendations in the report was to create a self-identified category for veteran-owned businesses that are interested in contracting with the city in our procurement systems. And so you heard Commissioner Hendon speak about the operation of that category in the passport system. The most updated number I received from Mox this morning was 406 self-identified veterans in that passport system. And so through that self-identified category, they are able to identify themselves with that status, which is a source of pride for many of them. And at the same time, they're not required to self-identify in that way, as Commissioner Hendon mentioned, is not something that is universally desired by the veteran community.
Well, WMBEs are not universal either, but those that choose obviously have
That's right.
the ability to do so.
That's right.
I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Commissioner Hendon, because I did have a couple more questions on SBS.
I just wanted to just go back to one other question before about the outreach piece and the dedicated staff. And for us, for our charter mandate is focused on 6 areas, Mr. Chair. And just to name those areas, it's healthcare, it's housing, it's employment, it's education, it's benefits, and it's culture. And so, what we hope is that if we interact with someone in one aspect of this, then once they come in and see the things we've got available, then it can touch another aspect. We can continue to get better. We want to keep cracking this nut as far as making sure more of our veterans know who we are. But, when I look at it, like we do claims right now as far as benefits. The hope is that if someone's coming at us in that identity, then if it turns out they are a businessman or someone who's self-employed, we can help them out. That's nyc.gov/vet claims. Same thing as far as helping veterans wherever they are in the housing journey, be it someone who is housing insecure or someone who is looking for affordable housing, someone's looking to own. It's nyc.gov/vet housing. We account for that. When I think about employment, we just launched a digital employment tool, nyc.gov/vet connect pro, which helps them identify opportunities for employment, especially city jobs. And then same thing on the benefit side, it's vet claims, nyc.gov/vet claims. For education, it's nyc.gov/student vet. So for any of our student veterans, of which there are about 12,250. So we're trying to get at people through all these different areas within our charter in the hopes that we can net more folks who are self-employed or thinking about entrepreneurship to have them come in and be assisted. So I just wanted to say that. And I appreciate everything you said too about what we can do, what we need to do. And on the culture side, it's events like that parade attended in the Bronx a couple of weeks ago, as far as the United Veterans Day Parade. And at the end of it, in my remarks, I told everyone, hey, go to nyc.gov/vets to learn more. So I'm always trying to push people at the various events on culture also to try to get in that funnel and learn about the things that we have available.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. But this specific hearing is focused on veteran entrepreneurs and small businesses, and the Department of Veteran Services does a tremendous amount of outreach in other areas. And they do a great job. We can always strive to do a better job, especially in the healthcare, housing, unemployment areas where we know veterans are suffering, as well as the suicide rates. We don't want to get into those things. Today's hearing is specifically focused on veteran entrepreneurs and the programs and services, support services that we offer, those that choose to open up a small business. I just want to go back to SBS. So SBS offers a fast-track boot camp that helps veterans apply their skills developed in the military to a growing and successful and profitable business. Is that correct?
SBS has offered the Fast Track program specific to veterans in past years, but not in the last, I believe, 2 fiscal years.
And is that specifically due to COVID?
No, that was due to low enrollment in that cohort of the Fast Track program.
So overall, when was the Fast Track Boot Camp program enacted?
SBS has been running Fast Track programs for more than 10 years. The Fast Track Boot Camp program, I believe, goes back to 2013 and was run, I believe, through FY18.
Do we know how many businesses have participated in the Fast Track Boot Camp program? 2013 through 18, 5-year span.
I don't have a comprehensive participation number for you. I can say that for each cohort, we attempt to recruit about 35 businesses, and then we experience some attrition over the course of the cohorts, but I'm happy to pull that for you and share that with the committee as a follow-up.
That would be great. Do you know how many programs, boot camp programs, SBS held during those 5 years?
Generally, it's 1 to 2 cohorts per year, like with a specific focus like that. The Fast Track program is it's based on a curriculum by the Kaufman Foundation, and it's meant to be it's instructor led plus peer learning, and we are holding Fast Track cohorts for various target audiences. So for women entrepreneurs, sector-based programming, tech entrepreneurs, for young people, various cohorts. So probably in those fiscal years, we would have held one veterans cohort per year. But again, I'll follow up on that for you.
So basically 5 to 10 in total. Couldn't be less than 5 and it wouldn't be more than 10 over 5 years.
That's my belief.
Look, I have more questions, but I want to turn it to some of our colleagues that have joined us. And I know that Councilmember Mizell has been in and out a few times, and it may be technical issues that he's having, but I know that he had joined in. So, Council Committee, I'm not sure if the council members have any questions.
Sure, I'll give an opportunity. Thank you. I will now call on council members in the order they have used the Zoom raise hand function. If you would like to ask a question and you have not yet used the Zoom raise hand function, please do so now. Council members, please keep your questions to 5 minutes. The Sergeant at Arms will keep the timer and will let you know when your time is up. You should begin once I have called on you and the Sergeant has announced that you may begin. Hold on, we have one hand up. Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson, this is for the committee members to ask questions of the admin when you are giving your testimony. Maybe you can pose the questions that you have during that time. Okay, I don't see any council member questions, so I will turn it back to Chair Dinowitz if you have any follow-up questions, and then Chair Jonai, if you have any follow-up questions to ask of the admin panel, then we'll turn to public testimony.
I have really one or two. One's a statement. It sounds like you're not saying it, but you're saying it that there is a problem with outreach, and that there's just not enough staff or resources to really do the outreach that needs to be done to reach out to our veterans, our veteran entrepreneurs. I have to say I agree with Chair Jonai that there's dignity and pride in being a veteran. And while there should be programs specifically for veterans, there is this EB, and you keep referring to programs that already exist and funneling our veterans to programs that already exist. So for the EBE program, for example, are veterans just explicitly or always considered socially disadvantaged? Does every veteran qualify for this program because of reasons like that? Can you talk more about that, please?
Sure. So eligibility for the EBE program requires that the majority owner of the firm belong to a social group that has been socially disadvantaged, in this country. And we do consider that veterans have been socially disadvantaged as a group. So by establishing military service, they establish that prong of identity in a social group that has been historically disadvantaged. But the EBE program also requires a proof of economic disadvantage. In the EBE program, we have a personal net worth limitation of $1 million. And so they need to show that their personal net worth does not exceed that. And also that they've experienced some disadvantage in business related to the social category that they're part of. So that they have experienced some disadvantage in business related to their status as a veteran. That could be, they share a narrative with our team about that social disadvantage. So for example, it could be that repeated deployments have impaired their ability to develop credit that would allow them to finance their business, or that actual stops and starts in their ability to operate their business or gain clients due to their military service. There might have been discrimination related to their service in a particular war. So for every applicant to EBE, they're sharing an individualized narrative about that disadvantage. But veteran status alone meets the requirement of social disadvantage in that program.
I mean, it sounds like we've also established that because of a lot of the items that you laid out, and because of veteran status, they're more likely to be at an economic disadvantage, not being able to start a business as early as they would have wanted to, let's say, or being redeployed. These are things you mentioned, we've spoken about how they have received negative treatment. So wouldn't all veterans be eligible for the EBE certification?
It's a consideration of each applicant to the program. And we do our due diligence and asking questions about the individual owners and their businesses and, and their stories. So I can't give you a blanket answer that all veterans would be eligible because those stories are different. But we certainly work to support our veterans in understanding the requirements of the program, assessing their eligibility for the program before doing the work to apply, and then getting in a solid application that we can use to verify their eligibility for the program. And again, if they're not eligible for that certification program, they're still gaining supports through our PTAC.
Right. So again, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what do we have for veterans? What special services and supports we have for veterans who literally put their lives in the line and put their families on hold? What does SPS have? And the answer is the same thing that any other business has. And I don't say that to insult the work you do. I'm sure you work very hard to find the services that may apply to our veterans. But just to echo what Councilmember Jonah said, there doesn't seem to be anything that Small Business Services does that really shows our support for our veterans. There's nothing specifically for them. That, again, you do the work to help funnel them in the right services that already exist. But when it comes to recognizing our veterans, it doesn't seem as though those programs are quite there.
I think that's fair on the entrepreneurship side, with the exception that we have offered the fast track for veterans specifically, and are happy to re-offer that service in the future with the partnership of DVS and other partners in recruiting for it. It's not a lack of willingness or a lack of the resource, but we need to recruit. It's meant to be a kind of peer learning cohort-based program, so we need to be able to recruit enough veterans to offer the cohort. But on the workforce side, we are offering services that are very specific to veteran job seekers and their spouses, and there are veteran specialists in that system that are providing those services very effectively. I said 24,000 veterans and spouses connected to jobs and career development since the onset of that program in 2012. And I would also just reiterate that our partnership with DVS and all of the veteran serving entities that we can reach through Department of Veteran Services to increase awareness of the services that we provide is probably our most important relationship. And that is a partnership that wasn't available at the time of the report, and that we really value and expect to yield further benefits.
Thank you. I don't know if Chair Jonah has anything to add, or any other committee members want to use their Zoom raise hand function to ask their questions.
Yes, I see we have a question from Councilmember Vallone. So Councilmember Vallone, you may begin when the sergeant starts.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I'm start now.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the co-chairs, and thank you to Chair Dinowitz and Joe and I for continuing the conversation. So much work has been done, Commissioner, I guess, both with DVS and small business, to make sure veterans have their say and can be found, as most of our conversations are, right, is locating, finding, and servicing veterans. I just wanted to get what do you think would be next in your vision to make sure that the concerns of both of the committee chairs and the advocates in this, to make sure that a veteran is listed on the job, on the services, on the website, to make sure that every other effort can be made? What do you envision as the next generation of services that can incorporate that? Because obviously we're going to be handing off to the next set of council members. We have a very great chair that is now going to take into the next term with Chair Dinowitz. I feel from the time I started 8 years ago, where there wasn't a DVS it was just an office. We have taken mountains of steps forward, and proud to co-chair that. And it's been an amazing 8 years working with all of our veterans. But I just wanted to see what you would think would be the next step to advocate especially what Chair Joe and I was talking about, and making that priority in this personnel and the website and the services with small business. It still seems to me that we need to take that next step to make sure there's that full incorporation between the two agencies.
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. Chair. I'm not Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Councilmember Malone.
It's all good.
I know you chair different committee, right? Just a couple of thoughts come to mind for me. One of them is it's a push-pull. In other words, how do we make something attractive where more veterans say, let's seek these folks out and make sure we're on this map so that we can be seen, and so there's the side of it of what can we do to be able to pull more veterans in, and how do we do outreach to pull more veterans in? But then there's the other side of it is how do we create this environment where there's this push where veterans say, look, I really want to be a part of this thing. And I hear what Chair Jonai is saying, in that if you have some sort of, special certification, special programming for the veterans, it's easier for more people just come up out of the woodwork with it if they see this thing. They can be able to, say, okay, here's the benefit for me for being a part of this. And I totally see that. And so I guess one part of it to me is, beyond the government aspect of this, making sure that we are putting our veterans in touch with private sector procurement opportunities, like making sure they know this is bigger than just contract with the city, with the state, with the feds, but also that you've got Fortune 500 companies that are based here in New York. You've got other folks who do things in supplier diversity for major corporations to make sure that they also are aware of who our people are. Spoke at a Greater New York Chamber of Commerce event a few weeks ago, and I said, no one can say they couldn't find a veteran business, to try to encourage those to do business with our people. I feel like that's one side of this. Another side of it is how do we, we used to, Deputy Commissioner Gross and myself and others would get on a regular call every other week to talk about these things and figure this stuff out. And a lot of it is to get to this place where we would have these special certification designations. There needs to be some sort of disparity study or some sort of a factual accounting of here's who our veterans are and what they're doing as far as their interactions with the city on the procurement level. And this is why we've been holding different webinars with PTACs, with SBS, to kind of try to get as many of our veterans as possible to get certified in some way, some shape, some form, to come on the radar, and then to say, okay, here's the opportunity to do business with the city. If I can show more of our people who have worked to try to do business with the city, and we can say, here's the number of veterans who've tried this, and here's what's happened as far as outcomes, there's reason for us to have some sort of special program akin to what we see for our minority and women-owned businesses and the EBEs. Then it makes it all the easier for this to just lock in. But right now we're not there. And that's why we keep talking about this map and talking about trying to get more people in it, talking about trying to engage them about doing business with the city so we have data to come back and say,
I remember that.
How this lines up. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And that's exactly the vision you outlined together with us. And it was so good to hear at the beginning. And one of the first bills, and I know Chair Dinowitz was trying to get that forward, I put in after this conversation was requiring other city agencies to get that data to you. Because no matter what committee I've ever sat on, it's always been this interagency cooperation issue. And it's not necessarily DVS's fault or
time expired
that information. It's sometimes a veteran may appear or show themselves through housing or small business or through immigration or through so many other agencies. And I think one of the first conversations you and I had was trying to get that data to you and DVS to work that template so that it didn't fall through the cracks. Because like you said, not every veterans from different generations, different ages, different conflicts, different wars, they have a different knowledge of computer, internet, or face-based programs, or like you said, chambers of commerce, great partners to have, because every one of the boroughs have that, but sometimes they don't know how to interact. And I think you doing that has been a great step. And I think that piece maybe some way that we can help with future or current legislation to require, and again, always to increase your budget, right? You got to have the staff and the ability to handle that. I mean, listen, we started with like 2 people and now we're up to a pretty decent crew, but it's never enough. I think requiring the agencies through, whether it's the deputy commissioners through the SBS, to make sure you know that there's not a veteran that's come through a different portal that didn't necessarily come through DVS is still another way we can help. Sorry for going over time. I always just want.
I don't want to say I agree with you completely on that. Something that was done earlier this year, and Deputy Commissioner Francis, he can speak more to it. Is we saw an executive order passed by the mayor, EO 65, requiring our agencies to start asking these veteran identifier questions. It breaks my heart that we'll get to a place where we're getting all the data regularly from our peer agencies after you leave office, because it's something that was very important to you. I remember that too, as far as one of the first discussions we had, Councilmember Vallone. And so, I can leave it to Kwame to speak more on what's going on with that, but this is something where there's an EO on this side of it. I can't speak to legislation that's occurred here, but it is something that's requiring city agencies to ask some form of a veteran identifier question so we can, I keep telling people we want to know as many M&Ms as possible so we can pull the green ones out when necessary. That's really what it does to kind of get at this data question, because a lot of these discussions, it goes back to need the data to be able to then take these next steps to do these other things. So I don't know.
Well, I remember when they came up with the New York City ID card, and they didn't even have it for veterans. And that was one of my first battles to say, why don't we have a designation for a veteran? They eventually got there, but again, the advocates we didn't have. So I thank you for the extra time. And I just wanted to say, since we are in December, and this is probably my last, it's truly been an honor to work with everyone on this panel and fellow council members, especially for veterans for 8 years. I fought to stay on this committee, and I have truly grown in my knowledge for that, and I will always take it with me wherever we go on our future paths. And I want to thank everyone. And it looks like this path is just getting bigger and better. And I thank Chair Dinowitz for the extra time. Thank you, everyone, and God bless. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone.
We've been joined by Councilmember Rosenthal. Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank Councilmember Vallone for those comments that he made. So before I'm going to ask the question both of Commissioner Hendon and Deputy Commissioner Gross, I can help come up with creative ideas on how to do outreach. And that would be working with our business communities. That would be working with the BIDs, business improvement districts. That would be working with the chambers, the merchant associations. And there's a slew of business-oriented organizations that you could do your outreach. But the real question that comes to mind is, regardless of that outreach and identifying veteran-owned businesses, there is no benefit for a veteran entrepreneur to self-identify as a veteran business in New York City. That's the point. You have no carrot. There is no special status. There is no special certification or a advantage to being recognized as a veteran entrepreneur in New York City. The state has a program. The federal government has a program. What's clear is New York City does not have a program. So the question is, given a magic wand and the ability to create magic, is there anything that either of you can suggest that New York City do, especially with the incoming administration, that they should do to help veteran entrepreneurs identify as a veteran-owned company that would directly benefit them?
Deputy Commissioner Gross, you want to take that first? Or you want me to start with that one?
You can start, Commissioner.
It's a hard one, Commissioner. I know, and it's difficult. And I know your heart is in the right. Your heart is there, and sometimes it's difficult to find the words. So I'm asking, in a perfect world, given all of the economic needs that you could come up with, what is it that we can do?
This is me speaking as a business owner myself, as a service-disabled business owner, as someone who ran an incubator for veterans who have their own businesses. I just want to say that first. I think that we can look at the discretionary spending amount and look at, potentially increasing it. Because if you look at the state level, the discretionary spend level for SDVOBs and MWBEs, it's $500,000 clean. At the city level, it's $500,000 for our MWBEs. I feel like if we said that if you are an SDVOB, state certified, and you get city certified as well, as far as certified as an EBE or as an LBE or something like that, something that's not already at that $500,000 level, that you too would have that same discretionary spend. There's already precedent for it at the state level. So even if it wouldn't go to the full $500,000, something better than the current discretionary spend cap of $20,000 for non-MWBEs would be something I think could be a first step. I just think that would make sense as like an initial step to kind of make sure our veterans know we see you, we appreciate you, and we think this could be something, I just feel like that's something that we could be able to do. That's just, you asked the question, Chair Jonah, and that's the answer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Deputy Commissioner?
So I guess first I would want to, if I had a magic wand, I would want to know what the barriers in our communication were that caused any veteran to believe that the existing programs were either not friendly, didn't acknowledge their status of veterans. I want the impact of these programs to be as broad as possible. And if there are individuals that they are trying to serve who believe that they don't belong in these programs, I want to tackle that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing would be to grow our PTAC services. I think the one-on-one technical assistance that the PTAC counselors provide is extremely effective, not just in helping folks know how to register and certify, but helping them identify contract opportunities on the city, state, and federal level. And they win at all of those levels of contracting. I would love to have more PTAC counselors to serve our veterans community. And that would require investment by both the city and by the federal government, since that's a partnership. Delivering that service is a partnership. So with the magic wand, every veteran with an intersectional identity, I want in the programs that address them now, and I want to address the barriers to their participation, and I want more PTAC services.
And I just want to make sure I understand that correctly, Deputy Commissioner Gross. Under the title of veteran, correct? Not under any other program, under the specific certification of veteran.
No, that wasn't my what I was saying. Yeah, that's not what I was saying. I was saying if there are veterans who are women, veterans of color, veterans who do not believe that our MWBE and EBE certifications are appropriate to them because somehow their veterans identity has to be subsumed or is not going to be recognized in those programs, I want to address whatever communication, marketing, or service issues we're having in the programs that create that perception, so that everyone that those programs are attempting to serve can benefit from those programs.
Well, that's my point. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't misunderstand you. I go back to self-identifying as a veteran-owned business that does not want to be under the umbrella of any other program other than veteran. And this could work well for the private sector as well as the public sector, by the way, because we have private sector entities that would be proud to work with a veteran-owned company. But that's the private sector. Our discussion here is what can the public sector do to entice identifying veterans that would benefit from the billions of dollars that we spend every year. Our last budget now is earmarked at $104 billion for New York City. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing is not a single dollar of that $104 billion is going to go specifically to a veteran-owned company under the title veteran.
So the last time we did an analysis of contracting wins by veterans, we looked at it based on the OGS list of service disabled veterans. And we found that of the SDVOBs in FY20, I believe, we had $82 million in city contracts that were won by our state certified SDVOBs. And we had a portion of those that had currently gained MWBE or EBE certification. And we've been working to increase that proportion. So it's not the case that veteran-owned businesses are not succeeding in city procurement. We know that they could succeed at a higher rate with more technical assistance and with more access to the certification programs, but they are able to access those opportunities. And on our last analysis, they were succeeding at the tune of nearly $83 million in that fiscal year.
Thank you for that answer, but I think it went around my question, and that is not because they're veteran enterprises. They fell under another category. And I'm saying specifically recognizing veterans for their service. Specifically, the city could do more, must do more. We certainly have a budget that can be allocated to this, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. We talk about veterans 3 times a year, and we don't give them enough. They've earned it. They're entitled to it, and under the title of veteran should be an exclusive group that are afforded opportunities aside from all the other programs that are afforded to all other organizations. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And I didn't want to be that direct, but I guess it is. I have no more questions. I want to thank, I hope the commissioner and deputy commissioner will stay on as we hear from some of the others that are going to testify. And I'm sure they'll have ideas as well and suggestions that perhaps the next administration can implement.
All right, well, thank you. Chair Dinowitz, do you have any follow-up questions before we turn to the first public panel? Okay.
I do not. Thank you.
No worries. We've
By
concluded.
the way, I'm sorry.
Oh,
One
no
thing
worries.
does come to mind. You know, we have vendor licenses. And I know the state has a policy in place where veterans are not restricted based on any number of permits that are issued and could, in parks, vend openly. Why is it New York City giving that at a minimum number of permits or licenses to vend on city streets toward veterans, not WMBEs, not socially economically challenged or disabled, specifically veterans? That would be a good start. I'm sorry.
No worries. Are we ready to, may I turn to the public panel, Chair Jonah? We're
Thank
good?
you.
Okay, no worries. We've concluded administration testimony and will now turn to public testimony. I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be calling on individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 3 minutes to speak. For panelists, after I call your name, a member of our staff will unmute you. There may be a few seconds of delay before you are unmuted. And again, we thank you for your patience. Please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before starting your testimony. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function. I will call on you after the panel has completed their testimony in the order in which you raised your hand. I would like to now welcome Peter S. Del Dibio, Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson, and Jean DeFrancis. to testify. Peter, you may begin when the timer starts.
Time starts now.
Peter, you may begin. Oh, I think we're having an audio problem. We can't hear you. Peter. You're still on mute. Okay, I don't know what's happening. Give me 1 second.
Can we go to any other panelists while we try to work it out with Peter?
Sure. Peter, can you try one more time? If we can't hear you right now, we'll get back to you. I'm going to move to the next panelist. Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson, when the timer starts, you may begin.
Time starts now.
That's me. Can everybody hear me?
We're good.
Okay, great. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps on active duty, combat arms, and special operations in worldwide deployment. Firstly, I'd like to thank the committee for everything they're doing, and also a special shout out to the commissioner for speaking at the Veterans Day Parade. It's good seeing you again. Upon retirement from the Marine Corps, I was employed by the Lockheed Martin Corporation as a principal responsible for winning hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts. And I've listened to all the remarks today, and it sounds like we're doing some good things, but I think we need a couple of forcing functions. One of which every contract I competed for from Lockheed Martin responding to an RFP, there was a small business percentage that we had to meet. So for example, let's say 40% of the contract had to be small business. Of that 40%, there was a certain percentage that must have gone to veteran-owned businesses and disabled veteran-owned businesses, in addition to the women-owned, the minority-owned, the underprivileged environments, et cetera, et cetera. That forcing function alone was significant in drawing multiple veteran-owned businesses into profitability. A couple of other things that I'm going to share, some of which have been addressed, some you might even be doing that perhaps were not even addressed today, but one is to establish some type of an internship. You know, just like the NFL has a Rooney Rule, we can have a Hendon Rule, you know, where we create internships with the large business corporations in the city of New York, first for employment, but to develop that business acumen where they could start their own small businesses after that. You know, we can liaise with the business improvement districts and the Chamber of Commerce, which was already addressed today. The other thing we can do is, you know, as a city resident and as a disabled veteran, when I go to pay my property taxes, I'm getting a veteran's discount. That's great. Let's do the same for the veterans' businesses so that they can get tax breaks on their licensing fees, their permit fees, and the taxes in which they have to pay. And by the way, let's see if we can accelerate that process and streamline it so that we can fast track them into profitability. The other thing I'll suggest, and this is part of reaching out, you know, there was numbers before that was talked about the 210,808 vets in the New York area. That number is going to increase because every single branch of the service is reducing in numbers. There's going to be some force reductions. They're not going to be recruiting as heavily. And a lot of that has to do with we're no longer fighting the war on terrorism, but technology. But we can establish pilot programs reaching out to certain schools. Who's going to school on the GI Bill? Okay. Let's identify those people and fast track them into some business programs and some small startups. So the last one I'll mention, because my time is running out here, is let's, as a city, let's start a veteran-owned company. Okay, it could be a small company employed by vets that the city provides a small investment in. It's a pilot program, and we'll pick something in the STEM field. Maybe cybersecurity, which is much needed, and there's a lot of veterans that have that technology. And cybersecurity is a technology that's needed throughout banking, industry, business, etc. We get a nucleus of folks that recruits the vets that have those skills, and they start a company. And then that company competes for business within the city of New York. Again, I'll go back to the forcing functions, meeting those small business goals, and part of those goals being veterans employment is definitely going to increase the amount of vets that do business, and that'll pull them into your program. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Watson, for the relationship, the friendship, and the work that you do. I'm proud to represent you, and I'm proud of the work that you do in the 13th Council District and citywide. You bring up an interesting point that these servicemen and women, the services that are scaling back, and as these men and women return back to the States and look for permanent homes, if we had programs that would entice veterans to call New York City home because that we're going to offer support and investment in them, I would imagine more veterans would currently seek to live in New York City. It would only make sense that you build it and they shall come. If we create the infrastructure for them, that many of them will choose to call New York City home that perhaps currently don't as they return and end their tour. Is that the point that you're making?
That's the point I'm making, and thank you for that. And I tell people that we live in the most patriotic city in the country, and it's one that every single city in the United States tries to emulate. And I still do work with the veterans. I'm involved in the American Legion. I'm the co-chair of the Veterans Day Parade in the Bronx. I've participated in multiple studies at the VA, and I also do all the congressional interviews for the 14th Congressional District for those New York kids that want to go to the service academies. You know, veterans, we talk about PTSD and some of the issues that veterans are having. And yes, that's true. And I'm confident that the VA in the city of New York is doing all they can to help them. Commissioner, your message was well received 2 weeks ago. But the message that I have is that veterans, they come with a sense of urgency, with a can-do attitude, with mission accomplishment, being a team player, how to get things done. Those are the people that big business, small business wants to employ, and those are the opportunities that we should be pursuing for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson. We will now be hearing from Jean DeFrancis. You may begin when the time starts. And Peter, we're going to come back to you, and hopefully your audio is working. So don't forget, we didn't forget about you.
Time starts now.
Great. I want to thank the committee, our council members, commissioner. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jean DeFrancis. I have an interesting expertise in this because I'm a veteran, and I also founded and organized a merchants association here in the Bronx. So I see firsthand, day in, day out, what small businesses in New York have to deal with. And I'm the newly elected first vice commander for the American Legion in Bronx County. So usually I don't attend these Zoom calls or council meetings, quite frankly, because I have little faith in them. I'm very active in the community. I attend all our community board meetings, precinct council meetings. But when it comes to large city, big clunky meetings, they seem to end in an echo chamber. And you're looking at the numbers, you're seeing what's clearly not working. And I want to suggest to the committee, to the commissioner, and to everyone listening to change the narrative. It's coming across that we're assisting veterans in entrepreneurship. You can assist veterans in homeless needs. You can assist veterans in employment needs. But when you're looking to be an entrepreneur, you're seeking the best of the best, and that's veterans. Veterans are the best of the best. Yes, we have issues with a small percentage PTSD and unemployment and homelessness and suicide rate as well. These are all crisis issues. But in the grand scheme of things, this is not the large majority of a veteran. And it's definitely not who you're looking to recruit, which is what I would look as a term. You're recruiting veterans to start a business in New York, because I would ask the committee, I would ask the commissioner, what are the Westchester County numbers? What are Nassau and Suffolk County numbers? Because if I have to, and I didn't do research, I'm just going off of my day-to-day activity, those numbers likely didn't increase because it's almost impossible to do business in New York City, and especially in the Bronx, where we have no parking. We have very little foot traffic due to the perception of danger, panhandlers, crime, dirt. It's very hard to do business in New York City. I would have better chance, and I am an entrepreneur, but I would make more money at a flea market or more money at Atlantic City than all the regulations, all the challenges that you have to face running a business in the Bronx or New York City at large. It's just too many. And you could assist as much as you want, but for any average veteran to put in and invest that kind of money, it's just much easier to go elsewhere. And I want to thank you all. I see my time is running out. I have so much more to say on this, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you, but that's just the basic core of it. It's the paradigm of how we're promoting this to veterans because it is a unique culture.
Time expired.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Gene, because I also represent Gene as a constituent. But just for the point, you can submit written testimony, and the council committee will repeat that as well. So although the hearing ends, you could submit testimony, and I'm not sure for what the deadline is. Is it 48 hours? Is that what I recall?
I think something like that.
Yeah.
I'll double check with our staff and I will confirm on the record for everyone. But definitely, if you have written testimony, definitely submit to testimony@nyc.council.gov.
The reason I say that, Gene, is because the points that you want to make, and after reflecting and hearing from the other panelists, could be useful to become a part of the record that later on the next administration will hopefully look at and come up with enticements and other corrections and investments that are needed. That's why I asked, and that goes for all of the panelists. So thank you, Gene.
Well, you're welcome. And like I said, thank you for having the time. And if I could use the 3 minutes for response to emphasize one more important fact, and that's to attack this as a two-flank attack. You also have to do the research in the community. You can give a grant to someone, but if the community doesn't need that function, for instance, a salon, a deli, you're putting in that money to put someone else out of business because there's only so much space of a pie that customers can cling to and the businesses can cling to. So if you're giving money to one organization or group, say, for instance, I own a salon and you're investing in a salon to open up right next door to me and be my competitor, this is not good business and this is not helping the community. For instance, my community needs a toy store. We need a coffee shop. We need a gym. Recruit veterans to open these businesses in the communities that are in need. And going at that angle on both sides, this project will work. Any other way, you're just throwing money at a situation that won't work. But thank you again.
Thank you so much, Gene. I'm going to now turn it back to Peter to see if Peter has audio. Peter?
Hello, everybody. I
great.
apologize for not being prompt with the audio.
No worries at all. We're going to, you may begin when the Sergeant at Arms starts the clock.
Time starts now.
In the Bronx, as far as the American Legion, which I represent, there are 12 posts in the Bronx, 5 of which, there are 5 posts that are paper posts or administrative posts that are all done by paper, totaling 17 posts. In Councilman Jonai's district alone, there are 7 physical posts and there are 3 paper posts, which total 10 posts. So of the 17 posts Bronx-wide, he hosts 10 of them. And there's 1 post, which is called AMVETS, which is also a veteran service post. The 2 points that I wish to make are, and they both tie in with what my esteemed colleague, Lieutenant Colonel Ron Watson, had mentioned. DVS should be contacting or consider contacting, respectfully, Commissioner, they should be contacting not only veterans groups, the veterans groups at colleges. I think Ron touched to that, but we have veterans advisors at these colleges. I personally have contacted not only SUNY Maritime, which is right in our district, but also I've extended it to Fordham University. And I talk to those veteran liaisons on those campuses on a regular basis. So I'm not sure if you've done it before, but it's definitely a pot that you want to touch base with. And very quickly, we mentioned about tax breaks. I, as a veteran, receive a tax break, like Ron Watson had mentioned. I can go anywhere out of the city of New York, anywhere outside the city. And I've had this conversation with Councilman Jonai. Outside the city, I can walk into the town clerk or any of the municipal offices, anywhere outside the 5 boroughs, and I can get a list of veterans that are receiving a tax break. You cannot do that in the city of New York. I have tried unsuccessfully. Department of Finance will not release that information, no matter who asks for it. I've had Councilman Jonai ask for it. I've had Assemblyman Benedetto ask for it. None of that will be released. None of that is available. So that puts not only DVS at a disadvantage of identifying those veterans that are receiving those tax breaks, but also puts folks like me that would like to garner membership to my organization. I would like to see maybe in the next session, the city council maybe address that issue and maybe release that information. Those are the two issues that I wanted to discuss. Thank you all very much. And I look forward to working in the future with Chairman Dinowitz.
Peter, I want to thank you because I also have the privilege of representing you as a constituent. But just for the record, Peter, you also have a title. Can you tell us what that title is when it comes to the veterans organization that you have?
Yes, I'm the past commander of the Bronx County. I am the current adjutant of Bronx County, and I also serve at the state level and the national level for the American Legion. At the state level, I am the chair of the National Security Committee, and at the national level, I am also on National Security Committee. Council, I think it's called, Council.
Peter, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of the brave men and women for their service. God bless our veterans, and thank you for continuing to give back to this country in so many other forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jonah. I'm going to actually now turn it over to Chair Dinowitz for questions for this panel, if you have any. Chair Dinowitz?
No additional questions.
Okay, great. We're going to now turn to our second, actually, it's council member questions. I'm so sorry. I now will turn it over to questions from other council members. I will now ask if there are any more questions for council members to use their Zoom raise hand function at this time. Okay, seeing as there are no hands raised, I will call on the next panel. Okay. We would like to now welcome Dave Chiro. After Dave, we will be hearing from Peter Kempner, and after Peter Kempner, we'll be hearing from Robert Pichardo. Dave, when the Sergeant at Arms starts the timer, you may begin.
Time starts now.
Thank you very much, Bianca, for this invite. It's very timely. And I say that because for the past 3 days, I was up at VetCon, which is a yearly event for the past 5 years that gathers together all of the veteran and service disabled veteran certified in New York State up in Albany for essentially an event that goes ahead and pairs up those certified service disabled veteran owned businesses with procurement opportunities at the state level. So it would be with the public aspect as well as private industries that are up there. So that's a yearly thing. And again, being a very timely basis. And one thing I'd like to just comment on, there was when Commissioner Herndon had initially, we had spoken a little over a year ago, and I am very thankful for the fact of him notifying Small Business Development Center, which is, I'm the Veteran Business Advisor at Farmingdale State College. but I also am one of the founding not-for-profit charitable organizations of the organization called the New York Veteran-Owned Business Association, which represents all of the 900 plus now businesses in the state of New York that are service disabled. What I'd like to sort of clarify with both chairs is like the 50,000 foot view of veteran versus service disabled veterans and then specific levels, because there is, I think, a little misperception. So as a certified veteran-owned business, certified, that certification only exists at the federal level with the VA, veteran. They also have a service disabled federal level at that level. Now we move down to state level. There is no veteran certification at the state level. There is a service disabled veteran-owned certification. And then when we move down to counties, specifically in the state of New York, currently there are only 4 counties that have an SDVOB, a service disabled veteran-owned business I'll call incentive, and that would be Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, and Onondaga counties. So during all of the testimony that I was listening to before, New York City can be, in addition to those 4 counties, adding those 5 counties on board. And again, referring back to this VetCon, in conversation with many administrators. So for instance, Ken Williams, who's the state certifier at New York State Office of General Services, essentially, we had gotten it down very simplistically to say, you know what? The MWBE exists at the federal level. The MWBE exists at the state level. The MWBE exists at the county level. So without the disparity study, which by the way, New York State did not conduct a disparity study, nor did Nassau or Suffolk. Okay, sorry.
You may continue. Finish.
You may continue.
Okay, so Nassau and Suffolk, as well as Westchester and Onondaga, did not conduct disparity studies either. However, I will put the caveat that Nassau may have just instituted it because they were reaching out for a company to do it. And that was the middle of last year, but then of course the pandemic. And I will read directly from Ken Williams what he sent regarding the disparity studies. It's a thank you for your service program, not a disparity program, so no study was or will be done. So essentially, for the veteran aspect, and just to clarify for both chairs, a veteran is receipt of a DD-214. They could either have been past service or they could be current service, because I know at the beginning of this hearing, they were asking about past service as well as current service. With the possession of a DD-214, you are a veteran.
I want to thank you for that, and I'm hopeful that you're going to submit something in writing that could further elaborate on any points that you may not have had time to.
The only thing I can say, Mr. Chair, is the law is already written for the MWBEs, and obviously not in the legislative type business. By going ahead and putting a space next to the MWBE, putting SDVOB or veteran, you will go ahead and you will be able to go on par and do exactly what you've been saying. Because as you were talking, I was making some notes, and one of the notes I made when you were commenting, I put bingo, and you were over target. You are right on target.
Thank you, David. We are now going to turn to our next panelist, Peter Kempner. Peter, you may begin when the Sergeant at Arms starts the clock.
Time starts now.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Peter Kempner and I'm the Legal Director at Volunteers of Legal Service, also known as VOLS. For over 20 years, the VOLS Micro Enterprise Project has helped existing and aspiring small businesses and micro entrepreneurs access high quality legal services. For many New Yorkers, owning a small business is an effective path out of poverty and into financial stability and independence. VOLS provides assistance with drafting contracts, reviewing government documents, protecting intellectual property, and advising on commercial leases. We partner with community and economic development organizations to connect with clients who would benefit from our legal assistance, focusing on minority, women, immigrant, and veteran-owned businesses. Our micro enterprise project works together with our Veterans Initiative to connect with veteran service organizations to help identify and serve veteran entrepreneurs and small business owners. We help them identify their legal needs and create an action plan to address them. We're providing our clients with access to high quality pro bono attorneys at our law firm partners. We strive to level the playing field for veteran small business owners. Unfortunately, free legal services for veteran small business owners and entrepreneurs is extremely scarce. Volunteer attorneys and small legal services programs like ours could only meet a small fraction of the community's needs. VOLS is one of 3 nonprofit legal services providers that participate in SBS's commercial lease assistance program. And this program is really innovative by providing free non-litigation legal assistance for representation of commercial tenants facing commercial lease challenges. But this program is limited to pre-litigation services and only to matters regarding commercial leases. SBS clearly recognizes the importance of legal counsel to small business owners in the commercial lease area, and that should be applauded. But legal services for small businesses is not only limited to commercial leases, and it does not meet the community's needs. Small business owners face a wide range of legal needs. Veteran entrepreneurs may need legal assistance with corporate entity selection, with business formation, intellectual property, contract review, regulatory compliance, employment matters, just to name some of the most frequent issues that we see. Funding free legal services for veteran entrepreneurs beyond commercial lease assistance can make the difference for so many veterans whose businesses are in their infancy. Building on the SBS-run NYC Business Solution Centers, which offer legal advising as part of the package of services to veteran entrepreneurs, the city should develop a more comprehensive and robust legal support program for veteran entrepreneurs. If I could just have one more moment, please. Including access to free full representation legal services can ensure that veterans are able to start their small businesses on a strong footing and have the proper supports if they face legal challenges as they build their businesses. Chair Jonai, you mentioned this, but New York State and New York City have a long history of creating programs and funding services for veteran entrepreneurs. The vending license program that you mentioned actually dates back to 1896 and was intended to benefit disabled veterans of the United States Civil War. These vending licenses, preferences for disabled veterans have endured for over 125 years and continue to give economic opportunities to entrepreneurial veterans. Our city's veterans represent the best of what we have to offer, and we should continue to strive to give them all the supports they need upon their return home and as they build their economic futures. Thank you for allowing us to submit this testimony.
Thank you so much, Peter. We will now be hearing from Robert. Robert, when the sergeant starts the time, you may begin.
Time starts now.
Good afternoon, all. Rob Paihoda here. I'm with the Small Business Administration. I'm located on Long Island, but I cover a lot of the Metro New York area stuff regarding veterans. I've been here almost 3 years, and I come from the Small Business Development Center world in New York City, where I advise veteran business owners, and I was the sort of the subject matter expert regarding recruiting veteran entrepreneurs as well as helping them get where they wanted to go. So I got a lot of traction with this. You know, when we all got up this morning, we all reached over, put on the radio or maybe the TV, and the same station came on, WIIFM. We all play it. I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, it's what's in it for me. And I'm speaking to you today as an advocate for veterans. I submitted testimony that's regarding the SBA only and all the services and the great stuff we do. So that's available on the record. But in light of the conversation from our co-chairs and my fellow panelists, I want to mention a couple of things. What's in it for me? Why do veterans want to do business in New York City? There's one thing and one thing only, in my opinion, from my experience, and that's the marketplace. Yeah, a lot of people want to move out of the city, want to move out of the state, but the market here in New York is second to none. But regarding anything else, I'm a veteran. Why do I want to self-identify in New York City? It's pretty scarce. I had the same conversation. I was exposed to the same discussion way back in 2011. We had the same discussion. SBS was being grilled by the co-chairs for small business as well as the veteran committee, and the same sort of conclusions came up. And at the time it was, well, we don't want to have a special deal for veterans because there are not that many here. They actually arranged for a study to be done by, I believe it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was a horrible study. I don't want to besmirch that company, but it was poorly done. They sampled about maybe 25 people, 25 business owners to figure out how many small business owners we had that were veterans in New York City. And the data wasn't there. They couldn't find it. Nobody self-identifies. Why would they bother? It's a hassle. And I gotta commend. I was here when MOVA was around, and I saw the transition from MOVA to DVS. You know, the commissioner being a small business owner himself and going through the process with incubators, he gets it. You know, you can't throw money at any of this stuff. You got to build capabilities. I would love to see a world where the next administration comes in, maybe with some of the leadership we have on board right now, identify a way to combine some of the skills and services between SBS, the city, OGS at the state, as well as the federal government. There's a lot of great things out there. Veterans just cannot find them. Opportunities, contracting. Why? Because we're in a virtual world right now. Why can't we work together to offer great education online? You got somebody out on Farmingdale, one of the best veteran advisors we have, I think, in the country, David Chiara, works at a SBDC.
Time expired.
Give me a second. Why can't he do virtual training if we do some kind of needs assessment? You can't just throw money and say, we want to have veteran business owners. We want to have a system, an ecosystem where we actually bring people in. They see the advantage. And maybe there's some kind of aspirational goal program set up for veteran-owned businesses where we make it attractive for people to want to stay in the city and become an entrepreneur. I'll stop there. Thank you so much for convening this event, and I'll always be available to you with any kind of questions you may have now or in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. I will now turn it over to Chair Dinowitz for questions if you have for this panel.
Well, we'll start with Chair Jonai, if that's.
No worries, Chair Jonai.
I'm good. I just want to thank all those that participated and encourage to help get the word out. I see the posting. It's up to 72 hours after the end of the hearing that veterans can submit their written testimony. So if you know of anyone that was not afforded, did not know about this hearing, they still can submit their testimony in writing and it will become a part of the record. It only helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chair Dinowitz, do you have any questions for this panel?
No, not this time.
Okay, I will now ask if there are any questions from council members. As a reminder, if council members have questions for a particular panelist, they should use the Zoom raise hand function at this time. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. I'm going to do a last call. If we had inadvertently missed anyone that has registered to testify today and has yet to have been called on, please use the Zoom raise hand function now, and you will be called in the order that your hand has been raised. All right, I think we got everyone. So I'm going to turn it over to Chair Dinowitz for closing remarks, and then Chair Jonai, you may give closing remarks. Chair Dinowitz.
Yes, thank you, Bianca. First, as always, I want to thank our service members, or veterans, and their families. Of course, my co-chair, Chair Jonai. Commissioner Hendon, thank you for attending and for staying to listen to our panelists. Deputy Commissioner Gross and Chief of Staff Francis, and of course, the staff, Bianca Vitale, Elizabeth Arts, Sebastian Bacci, Jenna Klaus, Mike Corbett, Sabrina Campbell. You know, we always say thank you to our veterans. We start and end every meeting by saying thank you to our veterans, service members, and families. But we always have to ask, you know, what does thank you look like? And in the city of New York, I think it means ensuring that our veterans, our entrepreneur veterans, are given the support they need. And while there's clearly work that has been done and a lot of efforts being made, and we have, you know, commissioners whose hearts are in the right place and who are doing their darndest to do a lot of work, we clearly as a city have a lot more to do to ensure that our veterans are supported and recognized for putting their lives on the line for our country, our freedoms, and to their families for making that sacrifice as their loved ones went off to serve. So I look forward to continued conversations, continued work to ensure that that thank you are not just empty words, but the thank yous are actually actions in terms of supporting our veterans.
Chair Jonah?
Chair Dinowitz, I want to thank you for co-chairing this hearing, and I'm hopeful that you're going to continue to build on the hearing in the new administration and with our new colleagues. Commissioner Hendon, I want to thank you. It's not too often that commissioners stay on for the entire hearing, so it's commendable, but I expect nothing less than that of a veteran who understands first one in and last one out mentality. To the veterans, it's more than thank you. The city has to show you how much we appreciate your sacrifice and your service. And the only way we can truly do that is by creating that ecosystem that you continue to thrive. And this is no secret. Our veterans' service did not end with their tour. They continue to come back into the communities and give back and build on the base that they find, bringing the expertise and the devotion and commitment with them. So I'm grateful, and I'm looking forward to working on more veterans calling New York City home than ever before. But that begins with New York City making it a home for veterans to call home. So thank you again.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz. Do you want to gavel us out and conclude this hearing?